On a foggy morning, Liana Brooks cinched her lunchbox and adjusted the scarf over her neck. She cautiously made her way along the muddy roadway, dodging puddles since the roadside had become slushy due to the rain that had fallen the night before. Determined not to be late again, she ran towards the hotel where she worked as a cleaner dressed in a worn uniform. As she approached the bend close to the hotel's entrance, a sleek, high-performance automobile sped past her. A wave of thick brown muck splashed across her clothing, face and hair as the tire spun wildly as it cut through a massive puddle. As the automobile sped off, Liana Brooks stood there, her hands shaking from embarrassment, and the water, a woman with dark shades, grinned smugly behind the tinted glass, her laughing barely audible as the automobile drove away. The fact that someone was observing them was a mystery to both of them. A man sat in a parked automobile nearby. His brows squinted and his lips pursed. He was there when Liana Brooks was covered in dirt, and when the wealthy woman smiled contentedly. However, he kept silent, his fingers tapping on the wheel as if calculating something more complex than an ordinary injustice. After being tardy and sporting a ruined uniform and hair dripping with filthy water, Liana Brooks finally made it to work. The manager started yelling at her about how unprofessional she was and how late she was before ever looking her in the eye. Liana Brooks ducked her head and nodded in response to the reprimand because she was too embarrassed to speak up. Without providing any assistance or consolation, her co-workers made fun of her behind her back. Regrettably, this would not be the last instance of her being mocked. Poor Sabrina Walsh, who was oblivious to the consequences of her conduct, showed up at her family's fashion business. As she confidently entered her office, she tossed her purse onto her high-end desk. In Sabrina Walsh's world, a signature or card swipe may erase her mistakes. She didn't think much of splashing a pedestrian, because it was only an annoyance. Even after witnessing everything, Evan Hartley couldn't get rid of the images in his head. This man wasn't like the rest. Strong, well-connected, and ever vigilant for the hidden narratives in the mundane, he possessed all three qualities. He couldn't shake the image of Liana Brooks's expression. She brought to mind a past victim, someone he had let down in the past. He called after, taking a long breath, "Find out who she is," he replied in a neutral but determined tone. "My curiosity has been piqued by the Grand Lux Hotel cleaner." Tears welled up in Liana Brooks' eyes as she spent the remainder of the day mopping floors and wiping windows. She felt filthy on the inside and out since the muck had hardened into her clothes and skin. She averted her eyes from everyone's because she didn't want to make them laugh anymore. During lunch, she found peace by sitting silently behind the hotel, allowing the wind to dry her clothing as she nibbled on bread. Evan Hartley got a detailed report that very afternoon. Liana Brooks, now 21 years old, was raised by her grandmother after she was orphaned when she was 12 years old. In order to settle the funeral debt, she worked extra shifts. No controversies, no grievances. A girl who works hard and tries to make it. Following a lengthy period of staring at her photo, Evan Hartley grinned cruelly. According to his whispers, Sabrina Walsh was the wrong girl to embarrass. While bragging over her morning drive, Sabrina Walsh was getting her nails done in her own suite. As she giggled to her buddy, you should have seen the expression on her face. It seemed like the world was collapsing to that poor animal. Nobody gets hurt by a little mud. The reckless deed by Sabrina Walsh had just started in motion, a series of circumstances that would soon turn their world upside down. But her buddies smiled along, oblivious to this. It was determined that Evan Hartley would personally watch Liana Brooks. He went into the hotel dressed casually and wore a cap to fool the security guards. She was robotic in her movements and had hollow eyes as she silently swept the marble floors. He observed her from a corner of the lobby. Her grace and resiliency, rather than her makeup, gave her an understated beauty. Claiming to have misplaced his keycard, he contacted her during lunch. With a friendly grin, Liana Brooks volunteered to assist and escorted him to the front desk. Despite the obvious sadness in her eyes, her humility and kindness stunned Evan Hartley. He remained anonymous, and neither she nor she could identify him. An earnest "thank you" from his lips. Without saying a word, she went back to her tasks. After nodding, a mysterious box arrived at Sabrina Walsh's doorstep at the same time. A framed portrait of a mud-covered Liana Brooks with the words "Remember her face" written on it was within. Assuming it was a joke, she was so confused and upset that she threw it in the trash. However, unimaginable nightmares would soon ensue. As a result of that photo, Liana Brooks discovered an envelope on her locker the following morning. The package contained a freshly laundered uniform and a heartfelt message for the courageous girl who refuses to give up, no matter how thick the muck. No one took the blame, and she looked around bewildered. A slight grin pulled at her mouth for the initial instance in days, but things were starting to fall apart in Sabrina Walsh's life. The car that belonged to her was stolen. There was a disappearance of her beloved purse. Someone at the photo session replaced her real designer heels with knockoffs. No one admitted guilt, but she did accuse her employees. "A person is trying to trick me," she yelled out. However, she was unaware that it had merely started. Justice, not vengeance, was what Evan Hartley sought. Truthful fairness. Those that brought people their knees down made them face the reflection they had evaded their whole lives and exposed them to the truth. In addition, he had to draw Liana Brooks nearer for the scheme to be successful. But first, she needed to trust him. Continual little surprises awaited Liana Brooks. Items such as a freshly made breakfast cleaning gloves and even bus tickets were discreetly stashed in her suitcase. She felt seen for the first time, even if she was perplexed by the anonymity of each action. She felt hope for the first time in a while because of it. Now paranoid, Sabrina Walsh hired bodyguards to trail her. Secretly, her co-workers made fun of her, and rumors began to circulate that her karma was about to strike. Things kept slipping out of her hands, no matter how hard she fought to keep them in. It unsettled her that someone was trying to make her look stupid. At last, Evan Hartley confronted Liana Brooks head-on. He started a chat about dreams, perseverance, and life, while still pretending to be a frequent guest. His advances caused Liana Brooks to flinch, but she eventually warmed up to him. His remarks were genuine and soothing, but she had no clue who he was. "Liana Brooks, you have a spark within you," he said to her. "Remain cognizant of that despite the presence of mud." Evan Hartley, the enigmatic visitor, and Liana Brooks's blossoming friendship was noticed. Envious of her unexpected good fortune, a few of her co-workers started to whisper. Vanessa Cruz, an especially nasty co-worker, plotted her demise by replacing her cleaning supplies with out-of-date chemicals, which led to a commotion when one of her guests stumbled. Evan Hartley saved Liana Brooks from termination. The acts of Vanessa Cruz were exposed when he presented the hotel surveillance tape that he had discreetly obtained. She was taken aback. Liana Brooks, just, "Why would you risk all that to lend me a hand?" "Excuse me," she inquired. "Hartley." Evan grinned. "You are important. Also, no one else treats you the way that you do." But Sabrina Walsh had her social media accounts deluged with anonymous remarks that accused her of being cold-hearted. Somehow, footage of her vehicle splattering Liana Brooks had made its way online. She was obviously visible in the registration, even though her face wasn't. She screamed and rushed to have it removed, but by then it was too late. The destruction has started. The elevation to floor supervisor came as a shock to Liana Brooks, who was unexpectedly summoned to Mr. Samuel Price's office. The director grinned and told Liana Brooks, "Your devotion has not gone unnoticed," even though she had no clue that Evan Hartley was the mastermind. With her heart overflowing with appreciation and astonishment, she graciously accepted. An urgent meeting was called by Sabrina Walsh and her public relations team in an effort to change the storyline. No one believed her attempts at making false internet sympathy posts. Her influence was failing for the very first time. Their family business was headed by her father, who cautioned her to keep a low profile. He was furious because she had embarrassed them enough. On the other hand, Liana Brooks was invited to lunch outside the hotel by Evan Hartley. With some hesitance, she eventually consented. She inquired about his fascination with her story during their breakfast. "There is good in the world," he remarked, after a brief pause, "because there are people like you. People who are excellent deserve better, in my opinion." The self-assurance of Liana Brooks started to blossom. The once ignored cleaner's demeanor transformed, her voice became more steady, and soon even bosses began to address her with respect. There was a change on the inside. She no longer doubted herself. Nevertheless, she continued to wear her old shoes and eat her inexpensive lunch. Envious Sabrina Walsh wore a sweatshirt and sunglasses to visit the hotel alone. Despite her best efforts, the cleaner girl had risen to the top, and she wanted to meet her. She became enraged when she saw Liana Brooks directing the other housekeepers. "What gives?" she whispered. Liana Brooks turned to greet a guest with a radiant smile, oblivious to the fact that she was being observed. Sabrina Walsh felt her stomach knot up at the sight of that genuine smile. Also observing from a distance, Evan Hartley noticed Sabrina Walsh and anticipated a clash imminently. He thought it was time to show his hand. Evan Hartley drew Liana Brooks to his home as he pretended to need her assistance with some renovating. Her jaw fell as she arrived. It was a vast, tranquil location, quite different from the cramped apartment she had been living in. "This is mine," she exclaimed with a gasp. Then Evan Hartley gave a little nod. "I long to reveal my true identity to you." Yes, the man who witnessed her getting splashed that day came clean as a rich entrepreneur and investor. Long moments passed with Liana Brooks remaining mute. Whispering, she asked why he hadn't told her sooner, reason being he wanted to avoid any suspicion of bias on his part. "Getting to know you was all I wanted." As Sabrina Walsh continued to be in the dark about Evan Hartley's involvement, she made some careless plans. She paid off one of Liana Brooks's employees to tell everyone what happened, where she lived, who she met, and when. The news that Liana Brooks had gone to a lavish estate only made her fury worse. "She's attempting to take all of my possessions," she yelled out. When Sabrina Walsh wanted to know more about Evan Hartley, she barged into her father's office. She snarled and asked whether anyone knew that he had been seeing a cleaning. Her dad blinked in bewilderment. "You won't get an answer from Evan Hartley. Plus, he isn't engaged to you, whoever he wants to see. He can." Her anger was further inflamed by that reply. In the meantime, Liana Brooks did her best to put some space between herself and Evan Hartley. Despite her profound admiration and appreciation for him, she was afraid their lives were too dissimilar. Shouting under her breath, she predicted that people will speak, as a gentle gesture. Evan Hartley raised her chin. "Silence them. Feelings are all that really important." Connor Mills, a private investigator hired by Sabrina Walsh, delves into Liana Brooks's background, whatever it took to ruin the girl she wanted. Dirt. Still nothing was found in the report. According to Connor Mills, she's immaculate. Caution is advised, though, on my part. You can't cross Evan Hartley. Sabrina Walsh's fist curled around the report. Then, I need to be more astute. One night, Liana Brooks came home to discover her little room had been searched. Her grandmother's framed photo was shattered, her drawer was open, and her clothes were all over the place. She knelt down, quivering. "Just violated, nothing taken." Cautionary notes. Somebody intended to frighten her. Shortly after, Evan Hartley showed up, having phoned to see how she was doing. His expression became frigid upon seeing the disorder. He claimed this was deliberate. This hit close to home. For her own protection, he begged her to remain at his guest house, but Liana Brooks declined. "Whoever did this will not be able to remove me from their life," she declared with conviction. As she sat in her car across the street, Sabrina Walsh observed from a distance. Upon seeing Evan Hartley's arrival, she observed him stand vigil over Liana Brooks, her nails dug into the steering wheel. "He's falling for her," she murmured cruelly, "but he's meant to be mine." The hotel announced a private guest event, and Liana Brooks was requested to handle the cleaning and setup. It was the biggest responsibility she'd ever had, and she poured herself into the work. With gusto, Evan Hartley offered to help, behind the scenes, just to support her. "This is your moment," he said. Sabrina Walsh pulled strings to attend the gathering, determined to cause a scene. She wore a gorgeous dress and strode in like royalty. Her temper flared when she witnessed Liana Brooks issuing directives to the personnel. When she was talking to her friend, she made fun of the fact that she's only a cleaner. This isn't her place. Liana Brooks ruined Sabrina Walsh's dress later that night when she inadvertently spilt wine on it. Bodies froze. Sabrina Walsh beamed as she patiently anticipated Liana Brooks's public shaming. With her composure unfaltering, Liana Brooks apologized and quietly substituted a new cloth for the napkin. The guests murmured their admiration. With a smug grin playing on his lips, Evan Hartley observed the entire event. Sabrina Walsh finally snapped. In the midst of the onlookers, she approached Liana Brooks. "Think you're on par with me just because you're wearing a uniform?" A sharp hiss escaped her lips. She met Liana Brooks's gaze. "No. However, your actions revealed the real wealthiest among us, not to mention the most expensive." Everyone around them gasped. Evan Hartley intervened and put himself in their path. "Settle down, Sabrina Walsh. I believe you've done enough." Her eyes widened in shock. "So you've decided on her?" "Excuse me?" she inquired. "You lost everything the day you smothered her in mud, but I'm choosing respect, kindness, and dignity," he said. Rich heiress defamed by hotel housekeeper, and classy return made front-page news the following day. What Liana Brooks had said had gone global. Sabrina Walsh's reputation received a further blow as social media went into overdrive with her support. However, she had more to say. "I am not ready just yet." When Sabrina Walsh got home, her father was waiting for her, and her credit cards were frozen. "It was enough," he remarked, with an air of coldness. "You are now a burden due to your outbursts. We will not engage you in any further business operations. Gather yourself intrigued." She fixed her gaze on him. "Are you also going to pick her?" Quietly, she spoke. With her spirits lifted, Liana Brooks started training new housekeepers at the hotel. She was the rock she never had, and her story had an impact on many from the sidelines. Evan Hartley observed his awe deepening with each passing day. He was entirely smitten with her. As they strolled around the guesthouse garden one evening, Evan Hartley leaned to her and whispered, "I've seen you rise from mud with more grace than anyone I've ever known. If you're open to it, I'd love to be a part of your tale." A well of tears welled up in Liana Brooks's eyes. Unless we can also be a part of each other's lives. More and more, Liana Brooks and Evan Hartley were seen together in public. Co-workers murmured questions, and a few even expressed skepticism about the relationship's longevity. Liana Brooks, however, was unconcerned about rumors. Someone finally recognized her value without requiring her to flaunt her privileged background, which was a first in her life. Frustration welled up inside Sabrina Walsh as she felt further marginalized by her father and her friends. In her search for affirmation, she paid a visit to her alma mater, but her mistakes still haunted her. It was as if nobody cared. "You made fun of a girl's financial situation. How could you have possibly anticipated this?" something was said. Liana Brooks was summoned once again to the director's office one morning, but this time it had nothing to do with her job. An unknown benefactor granted her a full scholarship so that she could attend school for hospitality management. Looking up, she was taken aback, but she had a good idea of who was responsible for it. She stammered through her words, pleading with the sponsor to thank them on her behalf. Obsession ensued as Sabrina Walsh's envy grew. Throughout her life, she had always commanded attention and admiration. Unexpectedly, her ego took a beating as she saw Liana Brooks, a former cleaner, received praise and admiration. Assuming Evan Hartley was indeed under a spell, she resolved to free him. In addition to her duties at the hotel, Liana Brooks enrolled in evening school. Time flew by, yet she never felt bored. Evan Hartley was there for her through thick and thin, and he would frequently wait outside of class to accompany her home. "You inspire me to believe in the possibility of anything," she whispered to him on that fateful night. An enigmatic note was concealed beneath Liana Brooks's door. It was a warning that she should remain where she was, or else. After showing it to Evan Hartley, security was notified right away. He stated with a grimace that this is no longer about jealousy, there is a risk here. On the night the letter arrived, surveillance footage showed Sabrina Walsh's vehicle passing Liana Brooks's house. Sabrina Walsh rejected all allegations when questioned. "Do you honestly believe I can keep up with your little mate?" She scowled, but Evan Hartley had had enough. As he turned away, he proclaimed, "You're not the woman I once thought you were." A hotel awards ceremony was the public unveiling of Liana Brooks's scholarship. Despite her modest attire, she exuded an aura befitting a princess as she took the stage. She delivered a brief address. Kindness, persistence, and a little assistance can transform anyone's tale. "Even though I may have begun at the bottom, even though she wasn't invited," Sabrina Walsh saw online footage of the event. Evan Hartley's pride shone through as Liana Brooks talked, leaving her with a hollow feeling inside. She said under her breath that Liana Brooks had taken everything from me, but in reality, she knew better. Sabrina Walsh never understood how much she had earned. In her last move, Sabrina Walsh tried to propagate the false story that Liana Brooks had cheated on Evan Hartley with him for his money. She tried to make Liana Brooks appear like a gold digger by creating a false account and posting manipulated images. Unfortunately, the internet saw through this ruse. Liana Brooks was strongly defended by the public. Evan Hartley took a stand against the falsehoods. "I have never encountered someone as honest and dedicated as Liana Brooks. No one who doubts her motives has ever experienced love." The media portrayed Sabrina Walsh in a negative light, making her seem vindictive and angry. She had grossly miscalculated her strategy. Sabrina Walsh had a brief escape from town after feeling besieged. The family money was severed from her by her father. He advised her to figure out who she was in a world without money. As time went on, Liana Brooks's connection with Evan Hartley deepened and flourished. After weathering several storms, she was now basking in the light. Liana Brooks achieved the highest possible honors degree in the hotel industry. At the ceremony, every member of the hotel staff was there to support her. In the front row, clutching a bouquet, was Evan Hartley, a soft murmur of "That's my girl" from his lips as she made her way across stage. Emotion gleamed in her eyes. Evan Hartley escorted her to a flower and light-adorned rooftop following the wedding. He bent down at the waist. "You have given me the meaning of love, altered my perspective, and inspired me. Will we tie the knot?" With her hands covering her mouth, Liana Brooks gasped before nodding. Yes, without a doubt, sure. Everything about Liana Brooks's journey had been extraordinary, from her clothes being saturated in mud to her proposal on a rooftop. Life would still throw her curveballs, but she was better prepared for them now that she had love strength and the support of someone who loved her for who she was. Flaws and all Evan Hartley and Liana Brooks's engagement became well known. Some were dubious, particularly among Evan Hartley's inner circle, while others praised the lovely love story. Behind closed doors, they murmured that he's marrying a cleaner. However, Evan Hartley remained unfazed. He declared with conviction that he was going to marry his beloved. The burden of expectations was heavy on Liana Brooks, even if she was happy. Everyone was now observing and criticizing every move, from smiles to waves to outfits. Evan Hartley informed her one night that "You are not obligated to give them perfection, just give yourself a break." They escaped the crowds and danced barefoot under the stars that night. Subtly but surely, Sabrina Walsh made her way back to town, transformed yet undefeated. Working at a nearby inn to make ends meet, She had spent months alone. She gained humility while doing housework for the first time and scrubbed floors and rooms. Standing outside Liana Brooks's hotel one day, she reflected rather than envied her. Over dinner, Liana Brooks had a private meeting with Evan Hartley's family. Despite her friendliness, his mother was wary. She emphasized that love is lovely, but that it requires courage to be displayed. A polite nod was given by Liana Brooks. "Then I will adore your son with all my heart." Her speech echoed through the space almost like a melody. At the same time, Sabrina Walsh began keeping a notebook and uploaded a video to YouTube in which she discussed her past disdain for individuals like Liana Brooks. Life, she remarked, had humbled her. "I have a new perspective on things." She received admiration and empathy after the video went viral, which she attributed to her willingness to admit fault. A peculiar calm washed over Liana Brooks. As well as she watched the movie, inviting Sabrina Walsh to meet, she gave her a call. "I don't hate you," Liana Brooks stated in a calm and collected manner, "but I refuse to be shackled by my past any longer." Despondent Sabrina Walsh cast her gaze downward. "This makes sense to me. Apologies too. No animosity? No animosity at all. Simply two women on separate roads." Liana Brooks insisted on a low-key, yet meaningful wedding, so the planning process started. A guest, not an employee, was her desire. She told Evan Hartley. Excitement filled the air of the hotel. Everyone had been moved by Liana Brooks's narrative. By marrying the CEO, she effectively became one of them. Liana Brooks overheard two women making fun of her heritage while she was getting her wedding dress fitted. As far as everyone can remember, she was the girl with the bleach scent. Someone scoffed. With a gentle smile, Liana Brooks approached them. "While bleach removed my pain, perseverance shaped my story. Love, though I gained wings through love." Quietness overcame the room. A pleasant surprise was ready for Liana Brooks by Evan Hartley. For her use as a weekend getaway, he restored her grandmother's childhood home. He said this so that people would always know where their strength came from. Liana Brooks sobbed uncontrollably. "Love isn't enough. You also respect me." Liana Brooks gazed at the stars from the hotel rooftop the night prior to her wedding. "I wish you could see me now," she whispered to her grandma. A soft wind caressed her face just like she needed it to. Feeling her presence, she closed her eyes. Unexpectedly, Sabrina Walsh arrived the following morning with a little box in her hand. "It's my mother's hairpin," she said. "You should wear it. I wore it thinking I was a queen. But you earned the crown." Liana Brooks hesitated, then accepted it. "Thank you, this means more than you know." The event began under brilliant sunlight. The aisle was lined with lilies, and the staff donned their finest outfits. When Liana Brooks went in, the crowd surged not because of her clothing, but because of her trip. Evan Hartley's eyes wet as he watched the lady who altered everything move toward him. Their vows weren't flawless. They stumbled, laughed, and even sobbed, but they were honest. "I adored you while you were coated in muck," Evan Hartley replied, "and I'll adore you through every storm." Liana Brooks grabbed his hand, tight. "And no matter what comes our way, whether it's joy or sadness, I will adore you." The reception quickly transformed into a lively party following the ceremony. The whole staff, including Sabrina Walsh, got down and danced. Love and life were the only things that mattered, not wealth, social standing, or titles. In the middle, staring about in shock, was Liana Brooks. "Why am I in this place?" Quietly she spoke. Her forehead was kissed by Evan Hartley. "The reason being that you persisted throughout." On that fateful night, they remained on the very street where Liana Brooks had been muddied by Sabrina Walsh, holding Evan Hartley's hand. Liana Brooks stood proudly in her bridal gown. This time, she claimed that the area no longer hurt. His lips curled into a smile. "You transformed it into a memory rather than a mark." And that's why Evan Hartley and Liana Brooks confronted the challenges of marriage head-on, but happily ever afters aren't quite common. Liana Brooks became beloved by the hotel personnel upon being promoted to co-director of operations. This was due less to her position and more to the fact that she had personal experience with their hardships. After assisting with the remodeling of a boutique, Sabrina Walsh found employment there and began to put her life back together. Despite their distant connection, she and Liana Brooks began to appreciate one another after meeting for coffee on occasion. She was informed by Liana Brooks that she had undergone a great transformation. Wryly, Sabrina Walsh grinned. "I did the same. The script can be turned in life in the most unexpected ways." More and more people started paying attention to the hotel, drawn in by its tale as much as its opulence. The place where love cleaned the floors was what the journalists dubbed it. Despite her pride, Liana Brooks often found the title amusing. She had risen from the position of invisible cleaner to manager of the very building. A prominent travel publication wanted to highlight Liana Brooks's adventure. Despite her initial hesitation, Evan Hartley offered words of encouragement. He said that your story gives hope to people. Liana Brooks consented, but only on the condition that every single employee be involved in the plot as well. As she emphasized, no one gets to the top on their own. A classy, understated photo session was the result. Standing next to the identical mop she had used on her initial day, Liana Brooks sported a delicate white blouse. Everyone from the kitchen staff to the bellhops and janitors stood proudly behind her, grinning. They shared in her success as much as she did. A flood of emails and letters from the previously invisible began flowing in as the piece went live. "As I read your story, a glimmer of hope appeared. Just seeing your smile gives me hope that tomorrow can be different. I'm scrubbing floors today, according to another. With tears welling up in her eyes, Liana Brooks read every word. One evening, Liana Brooks found her old cleaning uniform carefully folded in a drawer. She held it close, remembering the girl who used to wear it. Evan Hartley walked in and hugged her from behind. "You never needed saving, Liana Brooks. You just needed someone to see you." She smiled through her tears. "You did." The hotel organized a staff appreciation gala, the first of its kind. Liana Brooks offered a moving statement. "May this building be recognized not for its gilded chandeliers, but for the hearts that construct it." The entire room rose in applause. Some cried, some shouted, but everyone felt seen. That night, Sabrina Walsh attended silently from the back. She didn't want praise or attention. She just wanted to watch the result of a journey that started the day she poured mud on someone she thought was beneath her. Now she knew better. Sometimes she said to herself, "We need to fall to learn how to rise." Liana Brooks and Evan Hartley established a new training program within the hotel to enable cleaners, waitstaff, and clerks progress into leadership roles. "Everyone deserves a shot at more," Liana Brooks said the first class. Watching their eyes light up reminded her of who she once was and how far she had come. At a small anniversary dinner, Evan Hartley surprised Liana Brooks with a framed portrait of her in her cleaning uniform, with a current one of her in her director's suit. At the bottom, it read, "Never forget who you were, but never stop becoming who you're supposed to be." Liana Brooks was speechless. Perched on the rooftop of the hotel, the pair beheld the twinkling lights of the city below. "As far as Evan Hartley is concerned, we have created something elegant." Nodding, Liana Brooks responded, "Personality, optimism, and love are as important as physical structures." With a delicate clink of their glasses, they celebrated their union as husband and wife and as dreamers who had achieved their shared goals. The muddy path outside the hotel had been paved and cleaned, but Liana Brooks went back to it on the anniversary of her first day there. She remained motionless, lost in contemplation. She was approached timidly by a little girl wearing a cleaning uniform. According to her, "You serve as an example, ma'am." Both you and Liana Brooks responded with smiles. "Remember that always." Evan Hartley had a bouquet of lilies waiting for her in the lobby when she returned inside. "Will you be prepared?" he inquired. A firm grasp of his hand was obtained by her. Without fail, they entered the majestic halls not as members of the royal family or the elite, but as two lost souls who had discovered one other through the most unlikely of circumstances. The plot of Liana Brooks's Mud to Magnificence had nothing to do with vengeance or wealth. It centered on poise, honor, and power. The girl who was drenched in mud wasn't the only one. A symbol was made of the stain by her, the woman. Once she set out, she didn't turn around.